told her how to keep me in check. That's her fault. We got my name on it. This was over at Eddie Bromley, what I heard.
All right, we'll go ahead and start calling everybody together.
All right, we're gonna get started.
I'll negotiate next year.
All right, we're going to get started. If y'all can make your way back to your seats. All right, Pastor, here you go.
All right, and we probably do still have another one or two folks making their way from bathroom. We will, Tuesday, I will take all of these talks, we'll put them on the leadership part of Planning Center. You'll be able to access them. We'll send out PowerPoints so that you can look at those talks again. So we will make all of that available. And this morning, I want to reference two sets of videos that we have on our YouTube channel. One is about creating small groups, and the other is about turning service teams into dynamic spiritual communities, and that's what this talk's going to be based on. But if you want to know what I consider our number one challenge over the next 18 months, it is developing community. Now, pockets of our church do community extremely well, but we have, we brought some of our bad habits with us when we came as a new church. Some of our new people don't understand everything we're aiming toward, and when we hit goal in just a few weeks after the campaign, there's going to be so much that needs to be done, but our number one priority is going to be about building spiritual communities, and that really starts with leadership. And it really starts with modeling that even within our team. So today we're talking about turning service teams into dynamic spiritual communities. And I want to give you the primary function of a spiritual leader, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what a spiritual leader is. And there are a lot of folks that immediately discount themselves from being qualified for that. Now, Sam shared with us, Paul does hold up high standards, but the standards are not so impossibly high that it takes somebody like a guru or a yogi or somebody that sort of floats a few inches above the sand. And the primary definition that I would use for what a spiritual leader is, go to the next slide, skip that one, go to the next one. Okay, now go back to the lady with the green. So there we go. We didn't. I didn't give Chris any clues for when to change these, so I'll just have to look up. The primary function of a spiritual leader is someone who helps another person take their next step. That's it. That's what a spiritual leader is. You're helping someone take their next step in their spiritual growth, in their journey to follow Jesus. And here's the thing. Every person in this room is qualified to do that. You're capable of doing that. You've been chosen because you're already helping people do that very thing. But what are the qualifications? Go to the next slide. There are three qualifications. First of all, of course, you have to know Jesus. Paul says, I consider all my past accomplishments as worth nothing compared with the greatness of knowing Christ. I think over and over again we've talked about that, what our faith is not knowing a bunch of things about the Bible, but knowing the God of the Bible, knowing Him and knowing Him intimately. You can't give what you yourself don't have. The number two qualification, you need to be a person who is yielding your life to Jesus so that your life is gradually becoming cross-shaped. One of the things that's interesting is that we use the word gospel sometimes as a shorthand without thinking about what we really mean by the gospel. And if you were to really boil down what every single book in the New Testament does, is it first shows us the shape of Jesus' life. His was a cross-shaped life. Even though he's divine, even though all of heaven and earth belong to him, even though all the privileges of God says that he's the master, not the servant, he comes and he demonstrates his greatness through service. He pours out his life, he empties himself to pull up and redeem the human race. And then he calls us to follow his example, to demonstrate greatness through servanthood. And I'm thrilled to be able to say that you rub shoulders this morning with men and women who do that, right? We have, all across the spectrum of our church, we have people that have accomplished all kinds of things, professionally and academically and in sports and in the military, and yet these same men and women who could be honored in so many ways are setting up chairs. They're wiping the noses of little children. They're feeding teenagers food. They're caring for their neighbor. They demonstrate greatness through a cross-shaped life. And then number 3, the third qualification is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, you want to summarize the Torah? You want to know what the Old Testament teaches? It teaches that we are to love God and to love others. That's what the whole thing is about. It's a love affair. It's a love affair with God, and it's learning to love others. Go ahead and put the next one up. How many of you, no, let me not do that, because I don't want to either be sad if it's only 2 of you or embarrass you if you're only 1 of you. But if you saw my video, you know that I told in my video series on this topic, you know that I told 2 stories. And I told both of these stories come from a great church in Lansing, Michigan. One of my friends was the founding pastor there. And a number of years ago in the 90s, we went up there to take a look at this church as a teaching church because it had done a lot of things right. And one of the most interesting things is that the keynote address for the week that we were out there, the keynote address was given by the parking lot ministry guy, the guy who started the parking lot ministry. So this church had become one of the largest churches in Lansing. It would have several thousand people on a weekend, which meant that they had to have people out there making the parking lot work. And you think, well, if you're going to invite people from all over the country to come and listen, is that the person you would have talking to the group at the beginning? And the answer is yes. And the reason why is that for a while, the parking lot ministry was the #1 growing ministry in their church. And the reason why is because the person who was running it knew that it was more than about taking care of cars. It was first and foremost about taking care of people. And so he did a number of things that we're going to ask every one of our service teams to make sure that they do. First of all, they focused on Jesus. Now, they would get there in the mornings, they would have a busy morning. They didn't have a ton of time to do a 30-minute devotion or whatever, but they always read something from the Bible. They always prayed with each other because the focus was on Jesus, not on cars. The second thing is that they took care of each other. As he looked out on his men and women, he didn't see them as an means to an end. They were not just tools to get something done. They were people that had been entrusted to his care, and he cared about the people working in his ministry. And he knew them, he knew what was going on in their lives, they knew that he cared about them. And then third, they did life together. Now for this group, it was only once a year. Once a year, he would invite them out to the family farm, and they would have a picnic together, they would bring a potluck, and by doing that, they were developing community. And so the parking lot guy was so good at taking care of people, so good at helping them create community around Jesus, that there were people joining the church by joining their parking lot ministry. And in fact, it got so big that we asked him, we said, what do you do? Do you still run everything? He said, no, I'm 2 generations removed from that. He goes, I mentor the people who mentor the people who are running it. And he said, I've given most of that away. The second story was about the cookie ministry. So for a while, I don't think they do it this way anymore. When you would show up to the church, sometime the next week, they would bring you cookies. And so their evangelism team, their outreach team, would every Saturday get together and bake cookies. And the story was, they had a lady that just, when she showed up the first time, she said, I'm just wasting so much time. You pray, you talk, you share with each other, and then it takes you forever to get around to baking the cookies. I'm just going to bake the cookies and drop them off. And they said to her, Kathy, we don't want your cookies. And she said, what? They said, it's not about the cookies. And she got mad and she quit, and she did come back for a while. But she eventually came back and said, okay, tell me what this is really about. They said, of course it's important that we do outreach. Of course we have a task that we have to get done. But this is first and foremost about Jesus and about creating Christian community. And so even though we have a task that has to be done, we're not so eager to get to the task that we skip over the main thing. She said it took Kathy a while to get that, but eventually Kathy not only got it, but became the leader of the cookie ministry. Hi, my name's Kathy. And she was the one giving the talk. People think they're good at relationships, but we're at a weird place in our culture where people have probably never been worse at building and maintaining relationships than they are right now. And though it may seem really artificial that you have to do things like build in, like a sunshine committee, right, that actually acts as a safety net for the agape class. You have to, the reality is that if we leave these things up to our instinct and to being spontaneously done, we'll probably never get around to doing them. We're very bad in our culture right now at creating community and staying in community with one another. Let's talk about key components. So key components for our teams. I'm going to put my phone here. I'm make sure I stay on time. I've got till when, Chris? Let's see. I've got 10 more minutes. I can get it done in 10 minutes. So what we're asking each of your teams, we want you to do something to focus on Jesus. Again, you have work to do, and we understand that, but at minimum, our teams should always start with a Bible verse and a prayer. If you've got a team that you're lucky enough to work with, that team needs to have some mechanisms by which you know each other and take care of each other. And at least once a year, do something to do life together. I'll tell you a group that's exceptionally good at this is our Disciple Bible Study. So Susan Littell and Marie Delacre, we've now got a few other leaders, but once a year, really actually twice a year, we take a break from studying the Bible to remember that we're a Christian community and to love on each other and to care about each other. So your number one job as a leader is not the task that we've given you to do. And we need you to get the task done. If you're a finance team, we need to make sure we don't spend more money than we take in. If you're the building team, we need a building bill, right? We do have tasks. If you're on the setup team, every week it's got to be set up and taken down. But your number one job is to take care of people. And not to forget that the people that show up are giving you something very valuable when they give you their time, when they give you their energy, when they give you your commitment. Go to the next slide. I'm just going to give you an example here. So what do spiritual leaders investing in others? So your greatest way to expand your work, to maximize your work, is to invest in other people. We'll take the youth, for example. So Chase, you would think, what is Chase's primary job? You would think it would be to take care of our young people. But it's not actually the people that he spends the most amount of time with. So he has a core team around him that go to the retreats, that make Wednesday nights happen, that make Sunday mornings happen, and they're actually the people that he spends the most time with. Which means that if he'll develop them and pour into them, what he'll do is he'll not just add to his ministry, but he'll actually multiply the amount of reach that he has. So he has 8, 10 people. If he pours into them and teaches them to do the same thing, it has a multiplication effect. He also has just a huge host of people around him who I would think of as like, not the direct people, but they're the foundation that makes the whole thing work. You think about the 30 or 40 people that over the course of the year are going to bring, food, that are going to help at a rummage sale, that are going to, provide a donation. That foundation is going to create stability for that multiplication. And those are not just resources. Those are people. The investing in people is our primary way of expanding our leadership. So let's talk about go to the next slide. Let us not forsake meeting together somehow, but encouraging each other all the more as we see the day of Christ approaching. Again, emphasis on creating and teaching community. Over the next 18 months, we've got pockets of our church where we need to teach people how to be in community together. There are things that used to be common sense, that used to be instinctual, that we have just forgotten as a culture. And we're going to be working to create community. What do we do with them? Well, first of all, we equip them. Okay, somebody comes aboard. You've got to teach them actually what to do. So Tom North is an example. Tom is going to be taking over our stewardship in this year. And Tom said, "I'll be glad to be a part of this, but you better teach me how to do it, because I've never done this before." And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting JD and Jim Stackhouse and some others together with Tom North to make sure that he has the tools to be successful. How much time I got? I got 6 minutes. Training. You would think those would be the same, but training is not just giving them tools, but it's walking alongside of them so that they can be successful. One of the most difficult experiences I ever had, I was a very young pastor, fresh out of seminary, and the Salvation Army board invited me to come on and be their chair, and I was excited. I knew what the Salvation Army did, and they sat me down and they said, "Here's how you do it." And they said, "By the way, we're all resigning next week. We just needed you so that it didn't fall completely apart." And I said, "I've been on the job like 4 hours now. You're all leaving? You're all leaving? You've given me the tools, but that's assuming I know what to do with all these tools, right?" I was with John McCarty on one of our mountaintop experiences, and we were building a roof. I've never built a roof before. John's a very, very good teacher. There's a reason that he's had about a generation of young men that just sing his praises, because John doesn't just give you the tool and tell you what to do. He'll come alongside you. And we had a young man, and he cut one of the boards way short, and you could tell he was super embarrassed. He goes, "Look, I'm probably just the wrong guy." And John says, "You're not the wrong guy. You just got that board wrong. You'll get the next one right, and I'll show you how." And so he didn't allow that kid's failure to cut the first board to be the defining moment. He stayed with him until he knew how to get the boards the right length. And so we equip, we give them the tools, train, we stay with them, and third, we make ourselves redundant. And we've had a marvelous example of that recently. So JD was our first stewardship guy, right? And pretty much at first he's just doing it all by himself. And then Jim Stackhouse, a few others come, Jim Graham comes, offers his services. Jeannie comes alongside of them. And of course, you know that JD had a stroke, right? At the very beginning of our stewardship campaign, one of the most crucial times in our church. Thankfully, he had made himself so redundant that we have not missed a single beat. He's made it possible for the thing to go on. For a lot of us, we're so interested in being at the center that we forget to think about the equation. What happens if something happens to me. And we need, as leaders, one of the most important things you can do so that something lives beyond your legacy, so that your legacy is other people carrying it on long after your name's forgotten, is to make yourself redundant. To make sure that you've got men and women around you that know how to do it as well as you do. Stay with the airplane. Okay, I'll tell this story and then we'll finish one more thing and we'll be done. Love this story. You've heard me probably tell it before, but at the beginning of World War II, we were in big trouble. Japan had the strongest air force in the world. They had amazing fighter pilots, and we had an almost non-existing Air Force, Army Air Corps at the time. But what would be done by both sides over the course of the war would change everything. So the Japanese, their strategy was, we will always put the best pilot in the plane. Always, always, always. Then when that person gets shot down, we'll put the second best person in the plane. And so they would put their flying aces, all the training guys, all the recruiting guys, they didn't get to be in the airplanes. They got to train, but they didn't get to really fly missions until the aces were all shot down. The Air Force, their Army Air Corps took a different strategy. They said, we'll put our aces out there and we'll get them tons and tons of training. And we'll let them fly a lot of missions. But once they're seasoned, they're no longer flying missions. They're training their replacements. And the result is that by the end of World War II, Japan didn't have enough pilots to put in their airplanes, and we had more pilots capable of flying than we had airplanes. And the roles of who was on top were reversed greatly because the U.S. had focused on training and making leadership redundant. So I had to tell you two stories. I was at a church that did this very, very poorly, and it can be symbolized in the men's breakfast. So the men's breakfast, they had a men's breakfast once a month, and it was super good, one of the best breakfasts I've ever eaten. But it would always give money away to missions. But here's the thing: if you hadn't been in that church for 20 years, you weren't going to get to do anything fun. Hence the bacon. There a guy been frying the bacon for 60 years. And you didn't get to fry the bacon until he dropped dead. And the result is that our men's group never was able to attract and keep young guys. Because the message they would quickly understand when they got there is that they were going to be in the wings until all the old guys died. And the easiest thing that they could have done to build that men's group into something that was really multi-generational was give the young guys a chance to fry some bacon. And so, those of us that have more gray hair than other color, one of the greatest things we can do to help our church is to help bring young leaders beside us and to give them things to actually do, and as we slip more and more into a mentor role. So last thing, what's your number one job as a spiritual leader? Your number one job is to become somebody worth following. I thought about that. I was talking to my two best friends. We were having our Bible study, our Saturday morning Bible study, as I drove here. And I said, this is the take-home point that I'm going to be making, and yet I'm still trying to internalize this and live this out myself. By the end of my life, I want to have been somebody worthy of following. Your number one job is not to get tasks done, it's not to run meetings, though we're asking you to do both of those. Your number one job is to fall in love with Jesus and become somebody that reflects his life that others are compelled to follow because of the weight of your example. All right, Marie Delacry is coming next, and she asked me to tell a story, and this is the story. So the evidence that a lot of this is already happening at our church, one piece of that evidence was the other night's church council meeting. I've never been in such a joyful, playful, even silly meeting that got so much done. Marie Delacry was announcing all of our new leaders, and she said, please don't applause, don't applaud individually. Wait till we're done. And there was so much joy
Don't let that happen.
that she got interrupted like 17 times by applause, by cheers, by laughter. And she said, fine, applaud. And it was evidence that we are building community, that we do have joy, that we are building a culture of trust. And so at this point, we asked Marie to come and talk about how do we do that?